Between 27 and 34 AD, the most decisive 7 years in the entire biblical timeline unfold. The prophetic clock of Daniel begins to move, the Messiah enters history, the final confrontation with corrupted tradition erupts, and revelation breaks free from national boundaries for the first time. In 27 AD, John the Baptist appears in the wilderness as the promised Elijah. Not as a child chosen at birth, but as an adult prophet receiving his mission directly from God, just as Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and every true prophet before him. For the first time since Malachi, Israel meets a voice with real authority. John is not the storyteller of the Messiah. He is the recognizer, the one who creates the space in which the Messiah can exist. Jesus comes to John at the Jordan. In that moment, the Spirit descends, and the mission begins. This is the real beginning of the Messianic era, not his childhood, not metaphysical speculation, not pre-existence, but this historical moment at the river. John is Elijah, and the baptism is the birth of the Messiah, the day of anointing, the day of appointment, the moment when God authorizes his servant. The anointing is relational, not ontological. The Spirit establishes a bond of mission and responsibility. Jesus is chosen as Messiah the same way David was chosen as king, Moses as liberator, and the prophets as spokesman, but with a mission unlike any before him. No incarnation theology, only mission, identity, and responsibility. Daniel 9 locks precisely into this moment. The year 27 AD marks the beginning of the final prophetic week. In 31 AD, after 3.5 years of public teaching, healing, and confrontation, Jesus is cut off in the middle of the week. His message exposes the corruption of the leaders, the manipulation of the text, the philosophical contamination of the tradition, and the collapse of institutional authority. He is executed for truth. His death marks the end of the temple's moral authority, the collapse of ritual dominance, and the exposure of the interpretive empire that had replaced revelation with speculation. The cross becomes the collision point of two empires: Rome, the administrative empire; Greece, the philosophical empire. Jesus stands between them and is crushed by both. This moment marks the visible outbreak of the prophetic war. The little horn's power of interpretation meets the Messiah's power of truth. They cannot coexist. Every act of Jesus, every teaching, every confrontation, fits within this 3.5-year window, the precise center of Daniel's final week. The second half unfolds after his death, and its endpoint arrives in 34 AD. For 3 more years, the apostles continue the mission exclusively within Israel. The covenant has not yet crossed its boundary. Israel receives its final call. Then comes Cornelius. For the first time in recorded history, a Gentile receives direct revelation without converting to Judaism. The Spirit descends before circumcision, before ritual, before law. Peter is forced to acknowledge the unthinkable. God shows no favoritism. This is the exact moment when the prophetic clock for Israel stops. The year 34 AD is the end of the 70 weeks. It is the moment when the national covenant closes and revelation becomes universal. Judaism ceases to be the vessel of revelation, not through persecution or failure, but by prophetic design. The Spirit removes every boundary: circumcision, purity laws, temple authority, national exclusivism, and scriptural monopoly. Revelation leaves the ethnic religious framework. Truth becomes a matter of conscience. Peter becomes the anti-Jonah, entering the house that Israel had refused for centuries. The prophetic arc closes where it began, with God speaking directly to a man outside the covenant. It completes what Jesus began, removing the temple system in 31 AD and removing the national barrier in 34 AD. From this moment onward, truth is not Jewish truth. Revelation no longer belongs to a nation, a class, or an institution. It belongs to the human being restored by conscience and integrity. The philosophical empire of Greece and the legal empire of Rome still stand. But now a new force enters the world, not an institution, not a nation, but the individual transformed by truth. The year 34 AD closes the 70 weeks and opens the global timeline of Daniel and Revelation. Israel steps off the center stage. The world becomes the field. Conscience replaces institution. And from here, the prophetic narrative moves forward to its next episode.